I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence, broadcasting twice daily, once at 12 noon, once at 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. On Saturdays, we go just once a day at 5 p.m., and we have interviews dispersed throughout the week. Let's go into it.
And I forgot to put the message up, so I'm just doing it now. But before we start, please don't forget to subscribe because it really does help us out. Also, we try to read most of your comments live. If you really, really want your comment read out loud, you can always super chat and we pause the whole show for those and read them and interact with them. And at the moment, we're also trying to get to 100 likes per stream, so help us out with that. And that's it.
And we're getting close to 3,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed yet, it would be a big help. We really do. We recognize every time somebody pushes that subscribe button. Let's get into it a little bit. Before we do, I kind of want to recap what happened on the afternoon episode. It was very interesting because right before we went on the air, Danielle Smith had a live press conference. We didn't know it was going to go on. We aired the second half of that press conference live on the afternoon show. If you didn't catch it, I highly recommend going to watch it. She answered a bunch of questions and it didn't look good. She put almost a 2.5 year timeline for a secondary referendum, which was absolutely ridiculous. I hope Keith or Mitch Sylvester comes out with a statement talking about a more reasonable timeline, because 2.5 years for a secondary referendum is ridiculous.
But we were trying to look it up and we weren't able to find if anybody had done or given any further statements. We do know Mitch is going to have a meeting tonight with all the volunteers and canvassers at 7 p.m. So maybe something will come out from there. They're holding it until Mitch speaks to everybody, but I'm not sure.
Absolutely. And I will also say we're definitely looking at a longer timeline. I'm hoping it's not 2.5 years, but it looks like at least 5 months to the October 19th referendum. And then it's at least a year, probably next October, until we actually can, at the earliest, get the actual formal referendum that can cause a independence from Canada. Mm-hmm. The other side seems to think it's 2.5 years. That seems a little bit ridiculous to me, but with these new timelines, we also have to consider now the U.S. elections, both the midterms, but mainly the 2028 election. We really need a president in there, and it's either going to be hopefully J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio. Those are our two options for a president that would recognize an independent and free Alberta. If a Gavin Newsom gets in there, that would be a serious, I would say a serious monkey wrench in Alberta independence plans.
Yes, but should I say hi to some people?
Yeah, let's go through the comments if we can.
Lyle Norman says, Old Danny or Oi Danny. Old Danny is sitting on an explosive bag of stuff. P-O-O-P, LOL. And Lyle also says, Carney looks to be in hot water too.
Yeah, Carney is in, I would say, it doesn't really matter what he does. He has the majority government at this point, and he's going to hold that coalition together. And he's got more and more floor crossers every day, and he's setting people up for that. So I don't think it really matters what Carney does at any point. A lot of conservative national media is saying how he's in hot water, he's losing his coalition. He's got it for 3 years, and that's what we have to realize. That's why I'm so dedicated to Alberta independence, because we can actually affect change from a grassroots movement without a politician's help, and we can do it on a level the national conservatives can't even dream of.
And now we've clearly seen it will have to be without any politician's help, but I actually think that strengthens the movement even further.
Well, we're definitely seeing it's without any politician's help, and that includes conservative politicians, because Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith announced it at her afternoon press conference. She's going to be on the ground stumping against Alberta independence all summer long. Mm-hmm. Poilievre said the same thing. I say that's the end of their careers in Alberta, at least in my opinion. I'm not going to support them anymore whatsoever. So
Lyle Norman says, I wish they would quit putting Alberta in the same light as Canada. Us Albertans, like the Americans, unlike the Eastern Canadian people.
Absolutely. And I think the Americans know that. The Americans are going to support an independent Alberta as long as it's a Republican in office.
And it's during our noon stream after we showed the press conference, right as we were leaving, we did start having that conversation, thanks to Sean, one of our subscribers, saying this has to go more international. We need to gather and garner more international support, get this out of just the Alberta silo, just the Canada silo, and get the movement to go international, get independent media in the States, but elsewhere as well to cover it and give us that backing as well.
Well, and because we're in a longer time scale now, the U.S. midterms and the 2028 election are going to become crucial to make sure we have a president that will sympathize with Alberta independence and recognize us as a nation. So when the midterms come up, when they get closer, we're going to start adding a section into our shows talking about the midterms, hopefully getting the right candidate in office that they will recognize Alberta as an independent nation.
Pete says it's simply a referendum asking if we want a referendum. It's simply a way to kick our question down the road.
Exactly. And what we need to realize is Danielle Smith is very likely not even going to be in that position by the time we get that secondary referendum. We need to get somebody in there that we know as citizens of Alberta will put that question forward and will do everything in their power to push it forward. I don't have that confidence in Danielle Smith anymore.
Don Nadalek says, hello, Nat and Guy and everyone. You too, Lyle, LOL. Thank you for being here and says, agreed on all three. Wild Rose Republic says, hey, everyone. Hello. Thank you for being here. Primars 007 says, hola, Nat y Guy. Hola. Thank you for being here. Says, looks like it will soon be time to head to Mexico. Nat, got any nice senoritas to introduce me to? No head shave, nose wearing bug eaters, though. Nice conservative ones. Nose piercing, I mean, none of that. Unfortunately, most of my friends, funnily enough, are still from my woke era. So I've been able to have those debates and conversations with everybody, but I don't really know many conservative Mexican women.
Well, I would say we don't have many friends to begin with anyway. And I would also say stay away from Mexico City if you don't want woke people.
Yes.
There's still, the wokeness is infecting Mexico City primarily. The other regions of Mexico, it's not really so deep in. Maybe the tourist areas, but Mexico City is really where they planted their flag and they're trying to grow it like a cancer out of there into the rest of Mexico. They're having a bit of a problem because there is a strong non-moving moral foundation in the rest of Mexico.
Up north and to the sides as well of Mexico City, but like all the states up north are the most conservative religious ones. So San Luis, Nuevo León, Guadalajara, although there's a big gay pocket in there, but I would say any state other than Mexico City almost. Down south, it's too hot. Yvette DeVoe says, hey guys, hello. Says, how about the referendum question? I can say I'm thrilled about it. Long, complex, and presents two different options rather than a straightforward proposition. Don Nadalek says, I don't think it meets the Clarity Act. We do. And Yvette continues, I believe it will be confusing to many voters and does not provide a simple yes or no answer, which is the standard and clearest form for referendums.
Yeah, I'm actually really fine with the question. The question should guarantee us a minimum of a 60% vote for independence because the question actually has no consequences. If we can get people to vote yes, we can pitch it as if we want more leverage against Ottawa to get better negotiating leverage for Western Canada and Alberta, vote yes for independence. It doesn't mean that we're going to get independence because there has to be a secondary referendum. And when people were polled, 35% of people want independence, but 60% of people think Alberta is being treated unfair and want a better deal for Alberta. So the question is very favorable to us. The problem is it's the secondary referendum and the timeline for that secondary referendum to take place. It's been massively extended now. When I first heard Danielle Smith's announcement last night with the question, I was actually okay with the question. I knew it favored us massively. The problem that came up was I thought maybe 6 months after the first referendum would be the second referendum, and it's not looking like that. It's looking like up to a year after the first referendum is when the second referendum might take place, and that's the real problem.
And she also continued mentioning a lot of the court case and that being a big impediment to be able to move forward, and that she didn't know how long that would take. It could take years, she said.
Yeah, and she started off by saying 1 year. By the end of the press conference, she let it slip a couple times. She said it could take years, multiple years. And if that court case isn't overturned, then maybe we can never even have the secondary referendum, which would be absolutely outrageous. We definitely need some leadership at this point. We need clarity from Keith and Mitch Sylvester, I would say. They need to come out with new statements after what happened this afternoon. It was major news that happened this afternoon at Danielle Smith's press conference that I think nobody really kind of seen coming. And a lot of people I don't think watched.
And again, we're talking about the press conference we watched during the noon live that we had where Danielle Smith answered questions from the media. I believe it was called Referendum Media something. It's on her YouTube channel as well. But again, I don't know how many people actually saw it, other than the people that were here with us, because that, as you said, we were coming into it this in the afternoon, being like, okay, well, let's see what we can do. And right as we were watching it live with all of you, I think your mind specifically, but our minds changed completely on how and what the purpose of her doing this double referendum is.
Yeah, I was actually coming into our morning live with a pretty positive attitude. I knew the new question favored us, even if there wasn't real repercussions. And I assumed the second referendum was going to be quick. According to Danielle Smith, it's going to be years. If it's going to be years, Danny, we're going to have to get you out. But that's just my personal opinion. We'll see what the leadership says there.
Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying, stunning how many groups are lining up against us. Finally got the attention of the East. Wow, they sure must be scared that this will happen.
Absolutely. And Stephen, by the way,
yes.
Thank you for the open letter you wrote. We read the entire thing on the afternoon show. Mm-hmm. It's something I think a lot of people need to hear. If we have time tonight, we'll reread it because it was very powerful. As well, Stephen Jensen has been standing up at these UCP meetings and asking the tough questions that the UCP doesn't want asked. And more people need to do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Should we go into Alberta Stay Free and then I'll continue reading your comments after?
Yeah, let's go to Alberta Stay Free if we can.
Otherwise, we'll never move forward. But I do want to continue reading all your comments.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And starting with from PJ the Belt saying, quote, it's horrible. Could it be worse? Yes, but it is horrible. She betrayed a large chunk of her base to appease people who will never vote for her. She can easily call a binding referendum, but chooses not to. And Jason Levine says, quote, my thoughts about Danielle Smith's referendum announcement. First thoughts, it's not horrible, but I can understand why many will be frustrated.
And again, most of them posts and stuff we have today are from yesterday's press conference. None of this is taking into consideration the noon press conference she held today. So I think things are a little bit more severe than what everybody estimated yesterday. Because I was not very concerned yesterday after Danielle Smith's press conference. I was actually motivated to go. After today's press conference, it's a whole new timeline.
Should I play Jason Levine's?
Yeah, let's play Jason there.
Hey everybody, I'm sure you've watched the Danielle Smith announcement by now. I'm on my way to the airport and I felt a little compelled to kind of give you a little bit of what's on the top of my head as soon as I had it kind of worked out a little bit. I don't think this is bad news. If you really want independence in Alberta and you want a clean break from Canada, you definitely need to get around the courts in here, Alberta, and you also need to make sure that it's a binding referendum of the government. And this is what Danielle said she'll do if the referendum question she's put forward is in the affirmative, to ask a question that is binding for the government. This isn't the Stay Free Alberta question. This isn't the Lutsko question. It's not even a government independence question. It's a question of whether or not to have an independence referendum. I do think that could have been a worse announcement, but one of the things I am concerned about is the question itself is an or question, not a yes and no question. So I'm not sure how that's going to be clearly articulated and voted on. But take a few days, think about it, see what others have to say. Let's not get all riled up and too excited and too upset. I do think that in legal terms, and there's a divisive issue, that both sides are a little bit upset and a little bit happy, is probably a wise decision. So let's sit on this for a little bit. Let me know what you think. Put it in the comments. I appreciate you all taking your time. And thank you very much.
And one other thing I'll kind of say here, it's very important that I think we're trying to start a national and international conversation now, because we don't want to get run over and put it on the back page so nobody knows what's happening in Alberta and the legal system within Canada, with people trying to stand up for their rights and their independence. That being said, we need to stand strong with Quebec now. If the PQ can get into power, they're going to challenge a lot of this legislation and a lot of these things the federal government is trying to steamroll Alberta with. Alberta and Western Canada just do not have the political sway that Quebec does. And the PQ said if they do get into power, their first order of business is going to be a referendum on independence.
And also with the situation in Quebec, them having Bill 99, I think it does open up the road a little bit more for them. But if this is already happening in Alberta, I'm sure Plamondon, but everybody else within the PQ and anybody that wants independence in Quebec is looking at this and saying, well, look how much difficulties they're putting up, even the premier herself is putting up.
Absolutely. And I was also saying, when we got the news last night live on air, kind of, if this referendum question goes forward on October 19th, which obviously it is, we're going to need a second referendum. And I was hoping that second referendum would take place at the exact same time the independence referendum in Quebec would happen. That would give us a lot of leverage and put the federal government on its back foot. According to Danielle Smith's press conference at noon today, there's no chance for that because we're going to have to wait years for the actual second referendum. So it's going to be very interesting. Also, I was watching some other outlets. They're saying if we want to consult for that secondary referendum, it's going to take up to a year of consultation with First Nations or Indian bands, which seems a little bit ridiculous to me, but we better get that started now as well.
And again, we're showing a lot of stuff from before the press conference that happened earlier this evening, and we haven't today, and we haven't seen many people giving statements after that, like from Keith or anybody else. But Trina Laguerita says, listen to the voice of reason and stop the witch hunt. Keith Wilson's explanation of Danielle Smith's referendum question. I have so much respect for this man, and I hope he runs for governance of an independent Alberta.
And I will say this was a statement made yesterday. I actually, before I even watched the statement, I almost echoed the same thing to Nat off camera, word for word. My opinions changed after the noon press conference today, but I do respect Keith, and we should hear him out here.
I listened with great interest and care to the words and the announcement from our Premier Smith this evening. And I would like Alberta to move towards independence and become a free and independent country, free from Ottawa, as soon as possible. Now,
and he's not only saying that, he's actually backing it up. He's lighten his caseload 75%. It's the least amount of work he's had in 33 years, he says. And that's because he wants to step up in a more forward-facing role for Alberta independence.
So that's a positive, I guess, from yesterday.
It's a very good thing for us.
What the Premier announced tonight is that it's not going to happen right away if we do become independent. It's going to take some time and there's going to be some process. Why did she announce that rather than have an up or down vote on October 19th of this year?
And let's go to the real Stephen Jensen real quick here.
Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying Mitch Sylvester is reviving the Canvasser Army Zoom meeting tonight at 7 p.m. about plans, next steps, question and answers. Hope this is fruitful. Yes, and we've been, we said it at the top, but I'll thank you for reminding me to say it again. Yes, tonight for any canvassers or anybody that was part of all of that during that time, and you have the Zoom links. There will be a meeting at 7 tonight with Mitch Sylvester.
And questions need to be asked specifically about Danielle Smith's noon press conference today, not her question that she submitted last night. Yeah. She's claiming to have almost a 2.5-year timeline now, either a year or two after the first referendum on October 19th. That's how long it's going to take for the second referendum, according to her at her own noon press conference. Mm-hmm. Somebody should ask what a realistic timeline is, and can we shorten that time frame, because that seems much too long for me. We have a critical mass of individuals currently living in Alberta. If this thing goes 2.5 years, we might lose that advantage.
And if you haven't watched that press conference, again, I do recommend everybody go watch it beforehand, I would say. Okay, continuing with Keith.
Instead, there will be a vote either to stay in Canada or to give instruction to the government of Alberta to move forward with a binding referendum on independence. She explained why. And the reason is we've had a very unusual decision from the Court of King's Bench in the Sylvester petition case, where the court has very significantly enlarged the notion of a duly elected government's duty to consult First Nations, and enlarged it in an extremely problematic way to say the normal test, which is if a government's about to approve a forestry project, a mining project, a pipeline, or make a land use decision that can impact on First Nations traditional or treaty rights, there's a duty on part of the government to consult, get input from the First Nations, and see if any impacts can be mitigated. To be clear, there is not, nor has there ever been, a right of First Nations to veto projects. That is not a thing in law or under the Constitution. So what the justice did in the Sylvester case was essentially say that she's interpreting the law to mean that the government of Alberta has to consult even on policy and legislative decisions which takes the principle of parliamentary democracy and parliamentary supremacy and turns it on its head. So the government absolutely has to appeal. We cannot be a functioning democracy if the people we elect are not allowed to make the governance decisions, and they always must first seek permission from.
Okay, and we can leave it there. I highly recommend going to watch the whole statement. But again, I will reiterate that statement was made last night before Danielle Smith's noon press conference, which I really think changed a lot of the pieces on the chessboard. Also, she stated now, along with Pierre Poilievre, they're going to be both stumping on the ground in Alberta for nationalism to stay part of Canada and against Alberta independence. They're not just going to sit on the sidelines there. So we know who the Captain Canadas are. It's Pierre Poilievre and it's Danielle Smith. And these are people that I think federalists within Alberta do have respect for and will listen to. So we're going to have to mount some kind of offense or counter campaign against those two specifically. Mm-hmm. My thinking is Pierre Poilievre, we agree with a lot of his first principles, but he made those promises and wasn't able to enact that change, and he's not able to enact that change for at least 3 years. The people of Alberta want change now. Alberta independence offers that change now, and what Poilievre is saying is you can't have that change unless it's through him, which seems a little bit ridiculous to me, and it seems a little bit uniparty and elitist as well. The people shouldn't have to go through a politician to make change. If we can get through a citizens' initiative, that's the people rising up, taking control of the political levers that they have available to them.
True. And another commentary from Matthew Rowley from, what was his thing? Renew Alberta.
And I will say, and I say this every time we bring
And
Matthew.
this is from yesterday again.
And I say this every time I bring Matthew up. I do not agree with his constitution. I absolutely hate it. I'm not fighting for independence as hard as I am so we can go back to a Canadian constitution. That being said, he is a very intelligent man. Mm-hmm. He's very, very well articulated, and he very rarely brings up his constitution in these kinds of statements. And I don't believe he did it here either. I watched about 90% of the statement, and it was absolutely fantastic. So even though I disagree with him, I'm more than willing to hear him out every time. And I think he has a reasonable voice with inside of Alberta independence. Before we go into it, let's go into this one.
It hadn't shown up for me, sorry. Hold on. Alberta Nan for Independence, thank you so much for the $5 super chat saying, I can take questions to the meeting tonight, drop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to get answers. Thank you so much, Alberta Nan for Independence. And again, we think at least the most important question that I think needs to be asked is regarding today's noon press conference that Danielle Smith did, or 1 p.m. press conference that she did, and what she actually meant by apparently the fact that it's going to be stalled for not just a few months, but years now. Yeah,
let's just put the question simple so it will be easy to ask for somebody. And that is, based on Danielle Smith's noon press conference, she gave a timeline of up to 2.5 years, 2 years possibly after the October 19th question. What's the realistic timeline we're looking at if we're successful with the October 19th referendum? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And thank you for that as well. And if anybody else has questions, put them in the chat, and hopefully somebody's going to be at that meeting and can ask. This is one of the more important meetings, I think, that has gone down.
Mm-hmm. True. Okay, now let's get into Matthew Rowley's statement. Again, this is coming from yesterday, before today's press conference.
Well, you've probably heard the news by now. We have a referendum. It's a convoluted, confusing, and quite frankly, a bit stupid referendum. But we have a referendum. It shows us how bad Canada is, that this is the kind of nonsense that we have to go through just to ask the people of Alberta a question. We can't simply do it the easy way. We have to find a way to get around the courts because the courts are determined to stop us from doing as we please as the people of Alberta. This is where we're at. This referendum question or series of questions is not my ideal. It's not what I would have wanted, but it is a referendum, and that is what matters. We can look at it and we can say it's problematic for this reason or that. We can start attacking people for why they've created it the way they've created it. But at the end of the day, we have what we asked for. So now the question is, what are we going to do with it? Everything does happen for a reason. Everything does have a purpose. And here we have an opportunity to show that our side is right, that we are seeing something real, that Canada is damaged, that we need independence in order to save our province and in order to wake Canada up from the decay and destruction that it's in. So let's fight for it.
And pause it for a moment. And maybe we're going to continue with this, but maybe he's really right about that. A lot of people are saying, yeah, we need a secondary referendum, and that's the one that's going to matter because that's what's going to cause independence. But this first referendum, if we come out in mass, and the question now favors us up to 60% because it's not going to trigger automatic independence. What it triggers is leverage against the federal government. That could shake the rest of the provinces awake and say, wake up. Canada is broken. We need to fix it. Albertans are standing up for the rest of Canada, and hopefully everybody will get behind Alberta at that point. And that's how we get that second referendum on an expedient timeline and move it up.
And Philippe Soliu, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for the $10 super chat saying, Albertans, stand your ground. Learn from Trump supporters. Unfortunately, it may not always be nice. And I do agree with that. And again, Philippe Soliu is in Louisiana.
Yeah.
I believe in Louisiana, if I'm not remember correctly. But and exactly, thank you so much. And I think up to this point, it has been very... Well, I mean, that's how it works. Yes, we need to get a fire under our butts, I will say. But I also do agree with Alberta Nan for Independence, what she said earlier today, which is doing it in a smart way and with concentration and with actual proper determination to go forth, not just kicking and screaming the whole way.
Well, and I will say we're having a little bit of a rise in our independent media with Inside Alberta. A lot of people are coming out to support these little channels, and a lot of these little channels will start covering the midterms to some degree and the 2028 election. We are really gunning for a JD Vance or at least a Republican to get in office because we need that. We need a Republican in order to have Alberta recognized as an independent nation once we go into negotiations with Canada. So we are rooting for our American brothers and sisters to our south as well, just like they're rooting for us. So we appreciate all the support from the people in the U.S. as
The
well.
Americans, yes. Thank you so much, Philippe Soliu. And let's continue with the statement.
Now, don't get me wrong. There will be some that will look at the premier and say, what is wrong with you? And to a certain extent, I feel the same way. I don't know who is advising her that these convoluted, confusing questions are a good idea, but I understand the pressure that she's under. I understand the differing voices that she's trying to listen to, and I hope we have the good grace to give her a little bit of leeway. I have a friend who says perfect is the enemy of done. Well, we have the done. We have a referendum. And what the enemy of this referendum question is going to do is they will want to distract us. They will want to make us fight among ourselves.
And pause it.
And they will want...
And when he's talking about a little leeway for Danielle Smith, I actually had a lot of it. After last night's press conference, I was more than willing to give her a lot of leeway. The problem came up with the noon press conference today, and that's where I think a lot of issues are going to come up for a lot of people now.
Want to make us turn our efforts and our energy to anything other than winning a referendum. We have a question. It may be a confusing, convoluted question, but we have a question, so we have to fight. We have to argue. We have to present our case. We have to be winsome and hopeful. We don't do anybody a favor if we sit around and grump madly because, well, it's not the question I wanted. Well, the premier didn't do what I wanted. We need to fight for the truth. We need to do what we have to do to get this thing across the line. We need to keep our eyes on the target. So if anybody wants you to get distracted, if anybody looks at you and says, we should start campaigning in a different direction, maybe we should start campaigning against the UCP government. We should start campaigning against our fellow Albertans or other people in Canada. The answer is no. There is one mission and one mission alone. We have a question. Campaign for a win. Independence is our goal. Stay focused. Don't get distracted. Don't stop. Don't turn. We can win this. Not once, but twice. And because now we have 2 referendum questions, we have longer to prove our point that there is no way to fix Canada from inside. So am I annoyed? A little bit. Am I frustrated at whoever is advising the premier that these crazy, convoluted questions are going to help somehow? Definitely. But at the end of the day, am I confident that if we put our heads down, if we continue to do what we've been doing and we work hard, we can win this? Yes, I am. Don't give up hope. Don't be distracted.
And I will say this. I might disagree with the man a lot, but he has been coming out with some terrific statements at just the right moments, leaving his constitution out of it because he knows a lot of people disagree with it. He'll fight for that later, I guess. But when it comes to moments like this, he has given out some really good statements. We need to stay focused on October 19th. They're going to tell us it means nothing, that we need to win 2 referendums. It does mean something, and it can wake up all of Canadians. Alberta has the power to do that right now.
True. And I'm trying to. Sorry, we received an email from Teresa McCleary with a new statement from the First Nations. I'm just trying to get it so we can look at it. That's why I moved something and everything shifted. So let me just finish getting it. Should I bring it up now or after?
Yeah, no, bring it up now. We'll read it live. It's quite a long statement, so hopefully you can bear with us here. But this is a new statement from the First Nations. I had heard something about it. I think I started watching a video right before we went on air, but I didn't get the full gist of it. So
okay, and hold on, because we got a super chat as well. I'm just trying to fix this into the screen. Statement into the screen. Okay. Where are we?
I think it's from Teresa, actually.
Yes, Teresa Freedom. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat and saying I sent you an email about the latest release from First Nations. So yes, we're literally just going to read it now, but thank you so much for the super chat and for the information as well. Should we go on there?
Yeah, let's go right into it.
And then we'll keep reading your comments.
And I don't know anything about this statement. My guess is they're going to try to throw another court case or another monkey wrench into this thing.
So there's Treaty 8 First Nations of Alberta for immediate release from May 22nd, so today. Can I see? Yes. It says the chiefs of the Treaty 8 First Nations in Alberta are raising serious concerns regarding Premier Danielle Smith and the government of Alberta's continued efforts to advance separation-related initiatives without meaningful consultation with Treaty First Nations.
Hold on. Now we need a consultation for a referendum on a referendum? Are you freaking kidding me? According to the First Nations, of course.
Recent court decisions have reinforced that Alberta cannot unilaterally pursue actions impacting the constitutional framework of Canada, treaty rights, or the treaty relationship without fulfilling its obligations to consult and engage First Nations. So we got our way, now you listen to us.
And one more thing, Mitch tried to consult the First Nations and they refused to show up. They absolutely refused. How do we consult with somebody that refuses the consultation and then uses that in the law? Is that going to continue to happen for the next 2 years or indefinitely? So we can never have a secondary referendum so we can actually leave Canada? If that's the case,
or they're being used, I would say, by the law. The chiefs of Treaty 8 emphasized the recent legal interventions by treaty nations have already helped prevent what could have become a constitutional crisis, forced Alberta to acknowledge that consultation with First Nations is required, and reinforced that the treaties and the treaty relationship with the Crown are constitutionally protected from unilateral action by Alberta. Quote, these are important legal and constitutional victories, but the fight is far from over, said Grand Chief Trevor Mercredi, I guess. Quote, treaty nations are not idle on this issue. We will continue to defend the Constitution, uphold the treaty relationship, and ensure our rights, lands, and jurisdictions are respected. End quote. Treaty 8 First Nations are particularly concerned that Alberta's current approach appears focused on working around First Nations rather than working with First Nations. Both the proposed referendum process and Alberta's appeal of the recent ACFN decision continue to raise serious concerns regarding the province's willingness to uphold constitutional obligations and respect treaty rights. I think too much has already been done for them. Quote, Treaty number 8 was entered with the Crown long before Alberta became a province, said Grand Chief. These sacred agreements cannot simply be ignored or politically worked around. Treaty 8 First Nations are urging Premier Danielle Smith and the government of Alberta to immediately pause any further separation-related, or referendum-related processes until meaningful consultation and engagement with Treaty First Nations occurs. Treaty 8 First Nations will also be formally writing to the Prime Minister requesting that Alberta's proposed referendum question be reviewed by Parliament in accordance with the requirements of the Clarity Act. What the Premier has called is not just an Alberta question, but is a question for all Canadians. The chiefs of Treaty 8 will be holding a media scrum next week to publicly address these concerns and reaffirm that treaty nations will continue to stand in defense of the treaty relationship and Canada's constitutional framework. Further details regarding the media scrum will be released shortly.
We need even more sway within the UCP at this point, and we need to make sure going forward there will be no more land acknowledgements, period. Absolutely. If you watched the new members of Danielle Smith's caucus being sworn in, the first thing they did yesterday was a land acknowledgement. Absolutely ridiculous. They're the ones stopping us from even having democracy at this point. Once we get even more memberships in the UCP, we need to put it to a vote. No more land acknowledgements, period. I can't believe they're still doing them to this point. And this is Alberta. This isn't British Columbia. This isn't Ottawa. Why are these land acknowledgements being done? This is ceded land.
True. And I will say, there's only so much people will continue to take and to say, okay, yes, we agree and we have to agree and we have to continue down this road. And I'm also sure, again, because about 46% of members from First Nations tribes do and did want independence, I'm sure they are also not very appreciative that the chiefs are literally putting the people against them in a way that I don't even know if the chiefs fully understand or how much and to what extent they're actually being used by the government to go against all of this.
Well, and let's remember, we're trying to start a national conversation here. We want the world to know what's going on inside Canada and the corruption that the Canadian federal government and even the provincial government at this point are doing to stop us from our democratic right. There's a legal pathway to independence and it's being stopped at every turn. People in British Columbia are fed up with what's going on with private property. This is an adjacent issue. They are going to sympathize with us when the First Nations put out statements like that and they do their little press conference. So we'll be covering the press conference and maybe we'll interview Dallas Brody again at some point because these issues are really kind of binding a lot of conservatives in BC to conservatives within Alberta. And I think a lot of conservatives in BC are ready to get behind Alberta independence.
Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $5 super
thank
chat,
you.
saying they're lying POSs. That's how I have to say it. They are fabricating what it actually says in law and the Constitution, trying to convince people that they have these rights.
But they're going further than fabricating. Everybody can see exactly what it says. And it's in plain language, but they have an ideological judge making an ideological ruling rather than a ruling based upon the law. And that's where the real issue is. And then they say, oh, you have to wait years now because of an ideological ruling.
And I also say it's so unfortunate and so sad that they're putting their own people in these positions and to essentially using their own people as shields up against what they actually want to do, probably with indications from someone else higher in power telling them, oh, help us out with this, and you'll get some sort of, kickback.
Well, everybody sees what's going on right now, and everybody knows we have the 46%. We have the majority of First Nations members that support independence. I'm not going to be surprised if there's major improvements made on these reservations to try to change that number, because that is the tip of the spear for the federal government, are these First Nations. And it really screws up their narrative when we have 46% of the members siding with Alberta independence, which is the largest percentage of any demographic.
And Pete, I also agree with you saying the First Nations people need their own revolution against these chiefs.
Absolutely.
Especially after they continue to do this. And again, pitting their own people against everybody else, especially those that want independence and democracy to go through. Last post, Theo Fleury says, quote, when's the next AGM? Danielle Smith is moving in the direction of getting Jason Kenneyed. Let's have a meeting to schedule another meeting. There is no such thing as a sovereign Canada that has left the building. The longer this drags out, the more dystopian communist laws will be passed by the Liberals, and then it will be too late to have any vote at all. Carney also is not building any pipelines ever. They are just stalling to get Agenda 2030. Looks like Smith is all in on 2030.
And I'll say this as well. We did show Mitch Sylvester's statement he made, and man, he gave a lot of inside baseball information on how he has basically brought Smith to power, raised money for her time and time again, and how she's just backstabbed him time and time again and made excuses every time.
This was during his Today interview with John Bolton earlier in the morning.
Very interesting interview. I highly recommend going to watch it. We played a clip on the afternoon show.
And Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying, if only the First Nations voted, we would leave. True.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, if you could convince 4% more, then yeah, exactly. And yet the Chiefs are doing the exact opposite. I'm guessing being useful tools for others that don't want independence.
There was a post, I didn't grab it today, but it was very interesting about how the Chiefs in power fine other chiefs hundreds of thousands of dollars to prevent them from running against the chief that is in power. And this is a common tactic that's going on across all First Nations in Canada. Well, not all First Nations, but a large portion of First Nations. It's a tactic on how certain families stay in power.
But now let's go to your comments. Pete says, but will a no in October question give Smith the right to shut our question down if the appeal wins? Question mark.
Repeat that. I'm sorry.
Will a no in October's question give Smith the right to shut our question down if the appeal wins? That's what again, I'm not a legal scholar or lawyer, but that's kind of what I understood. I mean, if the first referendum question, the now referendum on a referendum, ends up as in no, we don't want a referendum, I think that gives her the clear mandate that people don't actually want the question asked.
Well, according to her statement on the noon press conference, and there was quite a few interesting statements she made. Number one, that she's going to be on the ground canvassing against independence and for nationalism, where she's not going to stand on the sideline along with Pierre Poilievre. But number two, she said, if people do not want independence on this first referendum, that's it. The conversation is over. But if they vote for independence, it's going to be a multi-year drawn out process, which is very concerning to me.
Pete also says JFK from The Compass saying, quote, those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.
Yeah, and I'm agreeing with that more and more these days. That being said, let's focus on October 19th. That's the goal we have in front of us right now.
Stephen Jensen says, I didn't expect Pierre to interfere. Sure, state your position, but he should stay out of provincial politics. Again, we've been saying for months now that he would eventually get tapped on the shoulder and say, go be Captain Canada, go advocate against independence in Alberta. And clearly now he is doing it alongside Danielle Smith.
Well, I was prepared for Pierre all along, so I already have a strategy for when he does start stumping on the ground. And I'll be contacting other content creators so they know the talking points. And the talking points are, we agree with a lot of Pierre Poilievre's first principles. He's made a lot of promises. He wasn't able to keep those promises because he couldn't get elected. Now the citizens of Alberta no longer need a politician, and we are going to enact the change that he couldn't. And now he's the one saying that we have to go through him to get that change. That's hypocritical. That's a uniparty style statement, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Pete says, ironic that Pierre Poilievre is the MP from a very strong independence riding. And again, because he had to go beg to be able to run as the MP because he lost his seat. Stephen Jensen says to Pete, yeah, I don't think he's going to get elected there again. No. And Pete says he won't even try, Stephen. Well, he better not, I guess, no.
Well, it's going to be, and because they need multiple speakers on the stage. And I don't think Pierre Poilievre nor Danielle Smith want to be seen with Jason Kenney or Ninchi. So I think it's going to be a little crew of Ninchi, Jen from the line, and Ninchi kind of canvassing together or making their speeches together. And it's going to be Poilievre and Danielle. And that is the troubling dynamic duo. Pierre Poilievre's a lot easier to shut down than Danielle Smith. She's going to have a lot of respect amongst federalists within Alberta. So we need to listen to what she says so we know the counterpoints that we can enact against her, because she's going to tout all these great victories, which are big nothing burgers that are chaining.
She did it yesterday and today.
Which are chaining Alberta to the federal government through these MOU and carbon taxes, not just a carbon tax for a new pipeline, but all the old ones that were built. She's now agreed to a carbon tax on those as well. We're paying tax on oil before a shovel's even in the ground.
Mm-hmm. Pete says many attitudes from yesterday are quite different after Smith's speech today.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did watch that. And I was trying to find people's reaction to that. It absolutely infuriated me. And I was nice and calm after yesterday's statement. I could not believe what was coming out of Smith's mouth today.
Mm-hmm. And again, we were trying to see if Keith Wilson, Mitch Sylvester, anybody had given any statements after today's 1 p.m. press conference, but we couldn't really find any. So I guess we'll wait. And tomorrow, remember, we do have a show at 5 p.m. So I'm sure by then the waters and the opinions might have settled a bit more.
Well, and people may be game planning right now because after last night's statement from Smith, I think that's everybody went into game plan mode. And then what she said on the noon press conference is going to make everybody have to recalculate their game plan now.
Yeah. Pete says the Chiefs don't care. I'm sure their Escalades are well armed. Yeah, exactly. More Escalades they can buy now. Sean says that the Chiefs and the First Nations adhere to democratic rules. I'm not a member of the Canadian Law Society, but it's weird there isn't any mechanism to put a hold on that judge's ruling like the USA.
Well,
no, I believe it's going into appeal. But again, Danielle even said today that's going to take a long time.
Well, maybe the First Nations are the law in Canada. That's what it's coming down to.
Yeah.
Because I thought we had a law in Canada about private property rights and other things. Now that's coming to the surface that we never did. And the First Nations are saying we are the law. You consult us. You do what we say, whether it's private property in BC or it's a vote for democracy within Alberta. All across the nation, it seems like their law outranks Canadian federal law. Oh, whose society are we living in here now?
Teresa Freedom says, I love that view, guy. That last thing you said.
Yeah.
I think.
About Polyev, maybe? I don't know.
Yes, about polio.
Okay.
Ghost of a Chance says that would have been my writing with PP over there. Okay, let me go to...
Well, and I think when Pierre Polyev actually comes to Alberta, we need to have protests in his own riding and really send a message.
Yeah. Yvette DeVos says, but it doesn't have to take years. We know that she could have done it now. Exactly.
Well, what her excuse was on the afternoon's press conference was if she put the question forward, that was a binding question, it would have been immediately challenged in court and things wouldn't have gone forward. So what she's saying is she put up this nothing burger of a question for October 19th, and it will take multiple years after that to get the second referendum, according to her own words at her noon press conference today. That being said, I don't think it's as much as a nothing burger as people think. If we come out in numbers and the question heavily favors us now, we can send a message to the rest of Canada, shake up the Conservatives, much like the truckers convoy did once upon a time. We may not have political power in Ottawa, but we have political power amongst the people within the provinces, especially in Western Canada.
And just because a bunch of people then answered Austin Westwood says a secondary referendum doesn't have to be out by a year from the October one. Only the citizen initiative ones have to be a year out from the question from before an election year. The question added is not from the citizen initiative process anymore. It's the premier adding it. Instead, to not get blocked by the court, she is legally able to add the binding one whenever after.
No,
Yeah.
According to Danielle Smith's statement, that's
From today.
not from today, not from yesterday. I know Keith Wilson came out with that statement. She's now had a counter statement. I'm guessing it's from Keith Wilson's statement because I was assuming it was going to be about 6 months after the first referendum would go the second referendum. And I was very excited about that. What Danielle Smith is saying now, after that October 19th referendum, she cannot have a binding referendum. She cannot present that question. Otherwise, it will be immediately challenged and stopped. She will have to wait for the court ruling in order to go forward with a binding question. That's her words, not mine. That's from today's noon press conference, not yesterday's, because I know after yesterday's statement she made, that was the general consensus, and that's what I thought too, and a lot of people were excited from that. And so was I.
Austin Westwood says, again, this is for the citizen initiative question. This is separate from the government calling a referendum, such as in response to the first one in October. That is a government question. Yes, but again, for some reason, she said that she would have to wait for the appeals process to be done with the citizen initiative. Again, it was very confusing today, the way she framed it and what she was trying to say. But towards the end, as she kept being questioned about, well, will there, if people do vote for during that first referendum to have a second referendum, how long would that take? And towards the end, she did just start saying it could take years. We have to wait for the appeals process. We have to wait. And she just kept convoluting it more and more and more. And you can watch it again, either on her channel or during our noon stream from today.
Yeah. And they're also now trying to say it's going to be a 1-year consultation with the First Nations. That's what they're trying to pitch forward. Danielle Smith didn't bring that up. A lot of legal analysts are now bringing that up. So even after October 19th, potentially a year for a consultation is ridiculous. Mitch Sylvester tried to consult with them. They refused to meet. Does that mean we don't have to consult? I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things up in the air right now.
Yes.
It's going to be very interesting what happens tonight at 7 p.m. with Mitch Sylvester taking questions.
Yes, I will be very interested to see that. Austin Westwood says, though, Guy, that is not what I understood at all from today's press conference. She was talking specifically about the citizen initiative. This question is not actually tied to that. But towards the end, again, she did continue mentioning that both consultation process, but also the 1 year or more period that it would take to actually get that question on a referendum.
Yeah.
So that that's what we understood, I guess.
Yeah.
We might be wrong, though. Hold on. Yvette DeVos says they can say...
well, what she kept saying is if she puts forward a binding referendum question, not like the one she presented now, it would be blocked.
Yes, she said
it
that.
would be blocked. And that's why she's presenting the question she is now. And that's why she can't present another one later after the first
Because it would
referendum.
be blocked by the
that was
courts.
specifically asked to her. And that's why she's putting a timeline of years onto it after the first referendum.
Because she said she would have to go through the appeals process first to ensure that the question that she puts on the referendum wouldn't be blocked by the courts as well, to have that precedent.
She's specifically talking about
remember now.
a binding referendum question she puts forward that it also pertains to a citizen-led referendum question as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we need to ask Mitch tonight.
And Austin says maybe, but that would go against her saying she wants to make the process as permissible as possible. Exactly. That's what makes it so infuriating. And that's, I think, why this press conference may have changed a lot of people's minds once all the kind of fog is taken away from what was actually said and what she was actually saying.
She's trying to shut down the vote. She's trying to get multiple cracks at the nut here. Number one, she says, if we vote against independence, that's the end of the conversation. There will not be another petition going forward. Then she says, well, if we vote for independence, it's going to be a multi-year process that we will start because that's what the people want, but it's going to take a long period of time. There's a lot of legal components. Not acceptable to me.
City Melnick says Mitch did say that he invited all the First Nations and sat all day and none of them showed up. Of course. And because, yeah. Hold on. Austin, just because I want to answer Austin's questions, or because I think a lot of people will be thinking this. Austin says, no, this is from the actual written law. That's my point. She will not be able to put that specific question forward, but she still can put a completely different question that doesn't follow that. But according to the Constitution and the law, the courts cannot block a question put forward by the government. Exactly. But again, she did say, that's what she said during the press conference. And as you were talking, I started remembering kind of the whole framework and context of the press conference, even before we started streaming, where she said, we have to wait for the appeals process to go through. And again, muddying both citizen and whatever question she could put on, because she said, if I put a binding question on the referendum right now as it is, the courts could still block it. And we need the appeals process so we can move forward with the new question that she could put in.
The point is why she couldn't put a binding referendum question even this time is the same reason she says she can't put one the next time. Otherwise, she would have done it for October 19th, according to her. But let's go into the next section if we can.
Yes. Hold on.
And what section are we going to? Alberta Politics here?
Yes.
Okay.
I just need to get this one off of the screen and now I can't find it. Here we go. Okay, let's go into Alberta Politics and then we'll continue going round and round. Oh, hold on. Freedom Calendar says, just let me read Max's one. Freedom Calendar Max, hello, thank you for being here, says, I remain optimistic about the whole situation. See how Mitch will react to this. I want to see you tomorrow in Saskatoon, guys.
Ask him about the timeline, because that's what we're all concerned about right now.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to ignore that. That's just a package that arrived. But yes, let's go to Alberta Politics so we can get rid of that noise.
Yeah.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
If you want, you can hang it up.
No, it's fine.
It should stop making sounds in a little bit. We do have sound dampening, so hopefully you don't hear it too loud. Okay, starting with Laurie Goldstein saying, quote, Poilievski says he will be campaigning across Alberta for Canadian unity. Some 700,000 Albertans have signed 2 separate petitions calling for referendums on Alberta's place in Canada.
And again, we actually played the clip of him saying this yesterday. He was emphatic about this. And on today's press conference with Danielle Smith, she was emphatic about it. And she restated it multiple times. She will be campaigning against independence on the ground throughout the entire summer. I'm assuming it's with Pierre Poilievre. It's the 1-2 punch of Captain Canada and Miss Captain Canada, I guess you're going to call them at this point. But they are the dynamic duo. They are what the Federalists needed because they had absolutely nothing with Kenny, Ninchi, and Jen from the line. Now they have 2 people that at least Federalist conservatives will listen to with inside of Alberta. Pierre Poilievre's going to be really easy to shut down, I believe, because he made promises he can't keep. He wants every conservative within Canada to wait 3 years to re-elect him. And if we try to make change on our own, he's going to campaign against it because we're traitors. That sounds ridiculous to me. You need to sit down because you're never going to be Prime Minister of Canada campaigning against independence at this point, campaigning against your own voters who are trying to enact the change that you couldn't, Mr. Poilievre.
And again, yesterday he said, as future prime minister in waiting, like he still has that idea in his head. And I think maybe the way he's looking at it and the way he's looking at the whole strategy, oh my God, the way he's looking at the whole strategy is, oh, well, if I campaign against Alberta, then I'll get way more votes. And that will actually help me out during an actual, in 3 years campaign maybe, or that might actually help me garner more and more support eventually. Oh, he's actually leaving. Okay. I'm guessing he's going to go figure out what's happening. Jeff Rat says, quote, she looked Albertans, I'm guessing Danielle Smith, she looked Albertans in the eye and completely lied to them. Both Justice Feasby and Justice Leonard confirmed her jurisdiction to call the Stay Free Alberta Independence question under Section 1 of the Referendum Act. She is the most dishonest and corrupt premier of my lifetime. And this comes from 3 a.m. today. Alberta Leonidas says, quote, what Smith has done is kick the can down the road to at least 2028. This non-question will be the only one this year, as you can only have one a year. You can't have one in an election year, which takes us to 2027. And again, this coming from yesterday still, because again, it's from 3 a.m. So I'm guessing the whole context of it has changed as well.
Oh, we got a crush box.
We can put it down there.
Here you go.
I don't, my address. Thank you.
It's not on there.
I just said, I thought you were going to just go hang up the little intercom.
I'm out of breath.
I don't know
Sure
what-
going off in the hallway as well.
I don't know why you went all the way outside, but okay. I'll bring this one up because I'm sure you wanted to say something about it. Jeff Rouse says, quote, she looked Albertans in the eye and completely lied to them. Both Justice Feasby and Justice Leonard confirmed her jurisdiction to call the Stay Free Alberta Independence question under Section 1 of the Referendum Act. She is the most dishonest and corrupt premier of my lifetime.
Yeah, and I'm glad Jeff Rath has been grinding the gears on Danielle Smith the entire time. People are going to start waking up to maybe he was a little bit more justified in what he was saying. I'm out of breath. I ran up and
Are you
down the
going to have a
stairs.
heart attack?
No heart attack.
Hopefully not. If yes, it'll be filmed. Okay, let's go to a video so you can rest. Courtney Thoreau says, Nancy here from today, saying, quote, he said, quote, if you're doing this for the separatists, if you're giving them the microphone, the money, the power, everything, then you're a separatist. This line isn't really working that much anymore because, again, even especially after today's press conference, this looks like less and less what Danielle Smith is even trying to do. I don't think they can paint her as a separatist anymore because she's doing apparently everything she can to not have the question. So
Well, it's going to
it
be
sounds even more ridiculous now.
it's going to be crazy because Ninchi wants to salami slice off all the voters from the UCP, but the UCP only gets stronger. Now the main two proponents of a Federalist candidate are going to be Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith. It's going to be very hard for him to counteract because he's kind of a nobody political figure. He's the dumbest guy in the room. And now they got Poilievre and Danielle Smith. It's going to be interesting how the three play off each other. And if we do have people that can ask questions at their rallies or to Poilievre or to Smith, you're going to want to bring up Ninchi into it in very strange and odd ways to make their alliance very prevalent to the general audience.
She understands that if she comes out as a full-throated separatist, she loses the election. But if she comes out as a full-throated Canadian, she loses her job as leader of the UCP. So let's be extremely clear. The separatists got her the job as leader. They installed her as the premier. David Parker admits that every day. And that's why they've had such entitlement through this whole thing. We always knew that she owed them something. We never knew precisely what the deal was or what she owed them. And now we know what she owed them was a referendum this fall. If she doesn't want Alberta to leave, then she would have said, well, look, the courts gave her an escape route. She would have said, well, the courts are waiting on this, and I'm waiting until the courts tell me what I can do to give you a clear question. But if she did that,
That's literally what she said. That's literally what she said during this afternoon's press conference. So again, his talking points make less and less sense now.
separatists would have rioted and taken over her party even more than they already have. So she's indebted to them. So whether or not she personally is a separatist, and I've known her for 30 years, and honestly, I don't know. I've never heard her speak patriotically about Canada, ever. Even last night, she really didn't. She sort of said, I love Canada, and then went on for 10 minutes about all the things she hates about Canada. And so who knows where she feels, but that's not the point. You know, if you are doing this for the separatists, if you're giving them the microphone, the money, the power, everything, then you're a separatist. There's no two ways around it. And so that's what she's got to wake up and look in the mirror and understand that everything we've got is because of her. The other thing that I'll mention on this is that she talked about how separatism is a growing force and it was all caused by Trudeau. Last I checked, he's not the prime minister anymore. But she had to go back to her old playbook because she didn't have anything else. She even blamed Jagmeet Singh. What Jagmeet Singh ever did? Poor guy never got close to power. But that's her playbook. That's her script. But what we actually know.
And they want to try to label everybody as this separatist, as a separatist. And what I say, if you're not for independence, you're a globalist, you're an elite, you're part of this uniparty that has turned its back on Canada a long time ago. Canada has become captured. Alberta independence is trying to break free from that capture.
You want to see Nancy again?
Oh, God.
From
Did I
last
grab
night?
2 of them?
This is from last night. Carl Robertson says, quote, Naheed Nancy and Danielle Smith saying the separatists are the ones who got her elected. We always knew there would be a quid pro quo. What quid pro quo? Again, his talking points make even less sense now.
The interesting thing here is that for a year, almost 2 years now, the Premier's been playing this very strange game as though she's an innocent bystander to all of this and the separatists are forcing her hand. In reality, she's been driving the bus the
And
whole
pause it
time.
for a
The
moment.
separatists are
I
the
just
ones who got-
realized he's not going against the independents. Do you notice this? It's always going against Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith is the strongest person the Federalists have at this point when it comes to her talking points, when it comes to her ability to convey those talking points. If they're fighting on their own side and they're tearing each other down, this is absolutely fantastic because as far as I'm concerned, Danielle Smith is a Federalist and let Ninchi tear her down every single day. And when Poilievre comes into town, he's going to attempt to tear down Poilievre as well. I'm absolutely sure of it.
Well, and also kind of what we used to say before about the nationalist conservatives that were against Alberta independence. In a way, they were also kind of doing our job for us by pointing out everything that is wrong with Canada. Well, now he's pointing out everything that's wrong with Danielle.
Got her elected. We always knew that there would be a quid pro quo. We always knew that she owed them something, and what she owes them is a referendum question. So when the courts threw out their question for the second time last week, she just doesn't want to take responsibility for this being the government's question. So she's now trying to pin it on the pro-Canada forces, the forever Canadian forces. But Albertans see right through that. They know this is the Premier paying back the separatists, throwing us into an unneeded, divisive, and costly referendum.
Okay, and you
she's
can
gonna
leave it there. And the problem with his whole statement is it's not a real referendum. It's a referendum that we need to use to shake Canada up and potentially get our second referendum, which is a real referendum. This first referendum is simply about more leverage to go against the federal government and try to claw back some of our freedoms within Alberta. The second referendum will be for independence.
Sean, we'll go into your comments and then we'll go into Alberta personalities. Sean says, oh, hold on. Hold on
Oh,
one
thank
second,
you.
Sean. Thank you so much, Stephen Jensen, for the $10 super chat saying Alberta Election Act does not preclude a referendum. At the same time, it says specifically that it is permitted. There is a 6-month exclusion, red zone only by convention to not have a referendum before an election.
Yeah, and the thing is, Smith isn't going to put it forward now after this first referendum. She's made that clear with, I believe, today's statement at noon, saying it's a years-long process and she can't put forward a binding question. If she can't do it, we're going to have to find somebody that is willing to do it. Period. At least that's how I see it right now. Now, I'm more than willing to be convinced otherwise by somebody that's smarter than me, such as a Keith Wilson or a Mitch Sylvester, who know the nuts and bolts on the ground and know a lot of the legal ins and outs. But as far as I see it, she said she's not going to put the binding question forward for years. If she's not going to do it, we're going to need to find somebody that is.
And again, she said that right off the top when this question started, and then she kind of continued to say it and even extend the timeline of how long it would take for her to put up that binding.
First, it was a year, and then it was a year. She answered the question again, and then it became 2 years. And then she kept saying years after that. So very disappointed in the noon statement from her. I'm just going to be honest with the audience. I'm very confused on what the timeline is for that second referendum. I'm more confident now than ever that we win that first referendum because we're already polling at 60% that people think Alberta has an unfair deal with Ottawa, and they will vote for independence because this isn't binding right now. We should easily win by 60%.
Goes of a Chance says, Pierre Poilievre has already bailed on Battle River Crowfoot. I must say, a really shitty political look, I will have to say. Sean says...
Well, now Alberta's going to bail on him.
Yeah, more. Sean says, seems like she doesn't want it voted on. This being appealed means little, and it sounds like there are mechanisms to go around it. Watch the First Nations challenge the non-binding referendum too. And she also kind of said that as well, and that it could, that her binding referendum could also get stuck in courts as well. She used every single, I think, excuse she could come up with.
Well, and Pierre Poilievre said yesterday, and you just brought it up, he said, oh, I'm the premier in waiting. Yeah, you're waiting for Canada to collapse because you didn't take off the gloves and took your opportunity when you had it. You're looking like a uniparty operative at this point that went down to the States, said the things that you should have said when you were actually running an election, but you didn't. You said them when you knew Mark Carney was already going to have floor crossers in that majority government. I'm sorry, Pierre Poilievre, you were offering the things that we wanted. You were unable to deliver. And now that the people want to deliver it for themselves, you're campaigning against that. Please explain that to me. I don't understand. I thought we had the same first principles here. Apparently we don't, because I don't believe we should have to go through a politician to get justice and democracy.
Christopher Chan says, Mitch has been betrayed one too many times, methinks. Especially
Me thinks so too. And that's why I trust him at this point.
Pete says, how much political manipulation does it take to change a light bulb? All of it, apparently. Pete says, Nenshi doesn't like separatism, but he loves separatists. Pete says, the Maserati Marxist wanted his pension. Pete says, liberals and NDPs have no right to call anyone divisive. No. And Sean says, it seems like you can't have a referendum or vote on anything without First Nations consultation, meaning approval for a vote. I saw the ruling and it doesn't address constitutional separation question.
Yeah.
The constitutional separation question. Because, I mean, that's how it
Canada has two forms of law. They have First Nations when it comes to private property rights or wanting democracy, and then a whole nother set of law, which is Canadian law, which is superseded by anything First Nations says they're going to supersede it by.
Sean says, Guy is right. He knows that Carney will drive the Canada car off the cliff and wants to be there to save the whole of Canada, knowing without Alberta, his chance of victory is a lot lower. I would say it's almost null.
Yeah, I'm not voting for the guy. I'm not backing him, especially when he's going to campaign against independence. It's not just that he's campaigning against independence. It's the fact that independence is trying to enact the change that he promised Canadians and could not deliver. And now that the citizens are trying to deliver it for themselves, he's saying, no, you have to go through me. That's just the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard.
Oh, it's a very politician move. Going over to RUMBLE, Portofino says, what bothers me the most is that she said if we had the signatures, then it would be on the referendum. So she lied. Unacceptable. I'm a UCP member and I'll vote her out. Never trust the floor crosser.
Absolutely.
KP4U says Mitch said he invited 48 people from First Nations and none showed up. And KP4U also says, well, it's a sad interview with Mitch today on John Bolton channel. Never seen him like that before. He'll bounce back, but he's going to need some time to think.
I'm going to tell you this. That was before today's noon statement.
Yeah, that was in the morning.
And the noon statement threw me for a freaking loop. So I can only imagine
everybody else
how Mitch is going to be tonight on that Zoom call.
Hold on. Sorry, I wanted to heart one of the super chats that I didn't get to heart. Todd says, hey guys, looking forward to the Zoom with Mitch. Got the link hot and ready for 10 to 7 p.m. Yes, it's tonight at 7 p.m. We'll finish before then, don't worry. Rage Against Machine says, we need a campaign manager, an actual leader to get behind. Beekeeper says, Keith Wilson said yesterday he would be willing to be our leader and that he's taking more time
off. And he's lightened his workload by 75%. It's the least workload he's had in 33 years. Maybe he's taking steps to get ready to take that position, whether it's leader of the UCP, leader of independence, who knows, but he's well prepared for anything now. So, and we're very lucky to have Keith Wilson as well as Mitch Sylvester.
Philippe Soliu says, yes, he Wilson did so, no giving up Albertans. Yvette DeVos says, feels like a setback and no victory in this round. We all followed the rules, the laws, the Constitution. We were patient, polite, and fair. I wrote a letter to the Premier today for what it's worth. And I think she's getting a lot of letters today as well.
When we read the real Stephen Jensen's open letter to her on our morning show, it was absolutely fantastic. And I think it echoed the sentiments of not only a lot of our viewers, but a lot of people within Alberta and Canada.
Thomas Muse says, that is right. Thank you. We're coming to a point where peoples can't take any more of these corrupt liars, meaning the chiefs.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate for the actual people that have to continue to live under them.
And I don't know how long the process is going to be here, but I know there is a process to be had. But we have to have somebody leading the UCP that we can trust and we know is guaranteed to push for that independence referendum, that second referendum that actually decides independence. We need somebody there that we know with every fiber of their being will make sure that question is eventually on there. Because right now when Danielle Smith says things, I don't know if I can believe her if she's ever going to put the question on there. I don't know what the timeline is. She almost refused to answer it, tried to dance around the question. And when she did answer it, she said years. I don't trust her to actually put the question on there. I think she's going to have this first referendum, try to tippy tap around the entire stage, and then leave for Ottawa and maybe take Poilievre's position or some other position.
Freedom Train says Smith has the power to hold a referendum on any question using Section 1 of the Referendum Act. It is entirely in her hands, which is why it's so puzzling after today's little press conference she did that she continued to blame the courts and say that this would have to continue to be delayed. And even if she could put a question on the referendum, that she couldn't. That's what she said, essentially.
Let's go into the next section if we can. And that's going to be...
Hold on. 8.2.0 says time for a new leader. I just wanted to get to... Where are we? Freedom Calendar says small PP is not your friend. And Mike Freedom Honey says the list of D-bags for this week is getting long. Yeah, I betcha.
Absolutely. And Mike Freedom Honey and Freedom Calendar, if you didn't watch Danielle Smith's noon question and answer, it was extremely revealing. It completely changed my opinion from last night's press conference. It was absolutely ridiculous, some of the statements she was making and the timeline she's trying to give for a secondary referendum.
And again, speaking of Mike Freedom Honey and Max from Freedom Calendar, we do have interviews coming out with them. We're still a little bit delayed in trying to work through all the interviews that we have done. We've been so lucky to be able to interview so many people. So look out for those coming up. I believe Max is coming up this weekend and Mike Freedom Honey coming up next week. But yes, let's go to Alberta Personalities.
Yeah.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Oh, I left Mike's Mike's thing on there. That sounded bad. I left Mike's comment on there. Okay, let's go. Speaking of, go to Derek Smith, an acceptable friend from yesterday, saying, I've reached out to your team twice directly, Pierre Poilievre, and they usually respond quickly, but not this time. This is your formal invitation to finally come onto an acceptable friend and explain to the thousands of Albertans who watch my channel one single reason staying in Canada is better than independence. I hope for and look forward to having this sit down with you if you truly care about speaking to the people of this province. And yesterday, at least during the show, Derek did uninvite Danielle Smith as well. Uninvite her.
Yeah, and I really think Poilievre's going to be a blessing when he campaigns against us. I mean, his ineptitude to affect change and the fact that we want the same things and he keeps telling us we can't have those things unless it's through him, I think is just plain hypocrisy. And I think it's going to unite a lot of Canada behind us and actually reveal to the rest of Canada, Poilievre can't enact change for 3 more years. He's saying, no, you can't have those things. You have to wait another 3 years. Why do I have to wait another 3 years? We have a chance for independence and enact change on a level that you could never dream of, Mr. Poilievre.
Like all Poilievre really is allowing us and helping us to do is to point out that all he has is words. All he's really ever done, mostly during his political career, at least since he's been the leader of the opposition, is words. Is have plans and words, and they all sound great. I mean, he outlines the problems perfectly. He has the perfect solutions, and yet they stay at that. They stay at promises and words that he can never accomplish.
Well, and every time he wants to point out something wrong with Carney, it doesn't matter for the next 3 years because Carney's going to keep doing Carney and keep destroying the country, and Poilievre's going to keep complaining, and he has no way to enact political change because Carney's dealing with a majority government now. If he actually wanted to enact change, the only way to do it is through Alberta independence in a quick time manner, or even Quebec independence for that matter.
But now we'll go back to your comments because that's my favorite part. Todd says, Fringe on the TV, canvasser meeting on the laptop for tonight at 7 p.m. Todd says,
it will be done by 7 p.m. just so everybody's aware.
Todd says, great way to spend a Friday night, lol, after getting the grass cut out front. Don't look in the trailer trash now. Philip Silviu says, can Alberta, and this is with all caps, can Alberta unilaterally make a decision to separate with just international recognition? Again, that's what I'm kind of looking more towards now.
That's what I've been looking more towards, and this is why I'm saying we need somebody like Keith Wilson in the spot that Danielle Smith has. Because we can't trust Danielle Smith as far as we can throw her anymore. She's always going to say she's doing something and really not doing what she's saying and kind of setting a very sneaky trap for us. We need somebody in that position we can trust. I don't mind if it takes an extended period of time, as long as we know the person in that position is actually working towards that goal. Danielle Smith is no longer working towards that goal.
Austin Westwood says, thanks to both of you for doing this format of show and engaging with us all. I'm sure we all appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you guys.
My favorite part is reading comments. On my Spanish show, I usually just read comments when I used to do it.
It's because she has no friends and, well, she has all
I have more friends than you.
Yeah, you got about 62.
and real life friends too. Charlotte says, typical federal conservatives seeking the support of people that will never vote for them. Idiocy. Freedom Calendar says, you just got the best thumbnail from Nancy when he was looking all weird when he was talking. Charlotte says, Bugmit Singh could have brought the Trudeau government down. What an idiot. I mean, that is true as well. Todd says, Nanshit's eye is lazy like the NDP voters. Miss Altot says, then she can just shut up. His party is organizationally tied to literal communists. He's a commie until he proves otherwise. He shouldn't be complaining about anybody else. No.
We need to take over the UCP party and make it a real conservative caucus with hard principles that don't compromise. And we need to support other parties that are like that, like the One BC party within British Columbia that's not compromising. The only reason the conservatives within British Columbia aren't liberalizing at a faster pace is because One BC is there holding the line on what real conservatism is, and they know they'll lose voters to them if they do liberalize.
Austin Westwood says, Pierre's press conference was utter stupidity. He knows he will be out of a job and the Conservative Party will never be voted in again if Alberta leaves. He just pissed those voters off. And interestingly, Todd, and I think this is an actual point we should continue to bring up further and further, says Pierre lost my vote federally voting for Max Bernier from the People's Party of Canada. That might start looking like more of an option, especially because Maxime Bernier said that within these next 3 years, when we asked him during the interview, they're going to start building up again and they're going to start putting more and more candidates in ridings. So
yeah, and he's put a lot of time on the ground. And the interesting thing about his platform, it's never changed. It's never changed. And that says a lot about the party itself and what their principles are. One BC also has non-compromising principles. If we do manage to take over the UCP, we should unite so we can start national conversations on a regular basis with PPC members in other provinces, with One BC members in other provinces, so we can really raise the profile of issues that we need to be addressed, whether it's independence or private property rights or other things. Non-compromising principles is what we want. And that's what the new UCP should be framed as once Danielle Smith is gone.
However, Austin Westwood says, to be fair, Danielle Smith has been the best premier in the country since she became premier. As of late, I guess, maybe.
The best of a bunch of globalists. I don't know what to say here because that MOU she signed did not do us any favors. It's committed us to a carbon tax, not just on the new pipeline, but all the old pipelines we have as well. Yeah. We're now paying carbon tax and we don't even have a shovel in the ground for the next pipeline. I'm really starting to wonder if she's trying to work on federalization of natural resources with Mark Carney, because when you're giving that much taxes out from your natural resources to the federal government, that's step one. Step two, the federal government is just going to start taking them from you.
It's going to take over. And Don Nadalek in response says, or was she just the best at fooling us and stalling? And again, I mean, she had that mandate for the immigration stuff, for everything else that she was putting on this referendum. She already had that mandate because she ran on that. And yet she thought, and she thinks she has to ask the people again if they want that done.
Well, and again, she's backtracked that nobody's noticed but me at this point. And I remember we said, well, she muddied the water with the other 9 questions. And we gave her a lot of shit for a lot of weeks. And I remember I was giving her a lot of shit as well. And then she came out and said, well, I'm going to unmuddy the waters. I'm going to count the independence question first. And if that is a vote for independence, we're not going to count the other 9 questions. She seems to not be saying that anymore. Matter of fact, she's saying a lot of the other things. She's going to have multiple mandates after the October 19th referendum. And if she does do that, that could invalidate the independence question itself. And the left, when I watch some of their political shows, they're saying exactly that. They're going to be challenging that in court.
Mm-hmm. Pete says, I used to think that Austin until I really dove into her record and of never actually taking action on the issues she was supposed to and supposedly supported or even being given a mandate by the people.
Yeah, and I will say after
immigration.
After I watched the Mitch Sylvester interview today, he really called her out and went into her voting history, went into all the support and donations that he got for her and what she was promising to do, and then how she completely backstabbed it and went and did something completely opposite. So I don't know how good of a premier she is. She's good maybe she's a better salesman than a premier.
Tyler Robinson says the premier knows the Liberals are bringing 30 by 30 and sovereign wealth fund to nationalize resources and extract all the money from Alberta. Why, Danielle? Why?
Exactly. And then she's jumping through other mechanisms on top of those. The federal government has those two mechanisms you just mentioned, and she's creating more mechanisms and agreeing to them. And then David Eppy's getting in on it. It seems like all of Western Canada right now is trying to federalize natural resources in conjunction with Mark Carney. And if you watch any liberal media, I don't know how many people do, but because I want to know the counter talking points and what the other side is saying, what they're saying is Mark Carney is attempting to federalize resources as well, but they're also saying he's going in the direction of natural resources and he's going away from clean energy, which if they're saying that, I can see that as well. So...
Christopher Chan says, PB and Milk Toast Andrew Scheer are Ottawa insiders. The gig is up, boys. It's been up for a while, I would say.
Yeah.
Rage Against Machine says, even if he wins, he can't change the Constitution. He is useless. PP. Yes, he is.
Well, and they keep him around. They want him there just yelling at the top of his lungs, talking about all the shit Mark Carney's doing, how he's doing a bad job. So it looks like there can be a change. Yeah. People are so stupid in Canada right now. They don't even realize he can't affect change until another election. And by that time, the elections will be rigged. Canada will be in shambles. What do you want us to wait 3 years for an election? Are you out of your freaking mind?
It's more than 3 years. Sorry. It's going to be more than 3 years. And again, even if he did get in, the changes that a lot of people want to, or think that they would be able to see almost immediately will take generations to actually enact. A lot of people won't even get to see them, honestly, even if the Conservatives get in.
Well, we can enact all those changes as soon as we get independence, overnight like that. And if we do that, what's he going to promise Canadians then?
True.
Oh, I'm going to give you what Alberta independence gave itself. You need me? No, then the rest of Canada is going to wake up realizing we don't need a politician. We'll just do what Alberta did.
Pete says, I think she's a sheep in wolf's clothing, Dawn. Yeah. David Bird asks, does anyone know when Danielle qualifies for her pension? BMC Television, thank you for being here, says, please hit the like button. Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're not subscribed, please do so. We're a very small channel, and we are committed to Alberta independence. We are going to the mat. I don't care how many years it takes here. And apparently after Danielle Smith's press conference today, it's a much longer timeline.
Freedom Calendar, Max says, okay, guys, going to bed. I need to go wake up at 2 a.m. so I can go to Saskatoon for the Saskatchewan Prosperity Town Hall. Good night, all. And this is becoming, that's why I wanted to read it. This is becoming more and more important now, too, with Saskatchewan, to get Saskatchewan talking and to get Quebec talking as well. And now it's more and more clear that as many provinces as we can get on board and as many provinces as we can get that national conversation, international conversation started with, the better. So I'm really glad Max is going over to Saskatchewan as well. And thank you for waking up at 2 a.m.
Well, and British Columbia is starting to wake up. They're waking up.
No private property.
No, not private property.
No, I'm saying they have no private property.
Yeah, they're waking up in a different way, though. They're waking up because of Alberta independence and the roadblocks that have been put in the way. And they're seeing on their news, there's no chance for independence. Now they see a referendum, and what they're seeing is, oh, wow, Mark Carney is making concessions, and we can actually make a change in Canada, even though Poilievre can't make a change for 3 years. Let's get behind Alberta independence so Western Canada might be able to have some leverage over the federal government. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that opinion, but that's what the content creators in BC are now seeing for Alberta independence, and that's why they're starting to get behind it now. They realize they're talking to thin air for the next 3 years unless they get behind Alberta independence, and then they have something.
And I want to know your opinion on this one. Austin Westwood says, I'm not sure about Max. He doesn't seem honest.
Maxime Bernier?
Yeah, I would say he seems the most honest.
Oh, I say his platform has never changed, so I really appreciate that. They were going after him for different prosecutions, so he had to leave. I believe he left Canada to avoid those prosecutions, more than likely. He's set to come back, so we'll see kind of what happens. But Yeah, who else are we gonna put in? You don't need them in Alberta because we have good people within the independence movement that would make good politicians. But Maxime Bernier in other provinces would be absolutely fantastic. He speaks French, maybe in Quebec, maybe run in Ottawa. Who knows? Maybe run in British
Quebec,
Columbia.
we have the PQ.
British Columbia, Dallas Brody and Maxime Bernier actually have a bit of a relationship already. So maybe they could make a bit of a coalition. I would absolutely love to see that. Alberta Independence and Alberta in general has enough strong personalities and people that are trustworthy that will make good politicians. We don't need Max here, but other provinces he would be absolutely fine in. And his supporters within Alberta will vote for independence because he backs not only Alberta independence, but 5 other independence movements globally.
Austin Westwood says she has stood, this being Danielle Smith, she has stood up against unions, is taking ideology out of schools, etc. She is standing up against Ottawa in a way that hasn't happened in decades. But I would say yes, and that is a good thing that she has been doing, but it's, I would even say, almost on the superficial level still, because this was the most important thing that she could have done, and she didn't.
It's not about it being the most important thing. It's the only thing that we need. We need to bring unity to the province. Period. Now, I believe it's through independence, but we need to have an actual tangible vote so at least people know going forward what the hell is going on here.
Costa Vachan says, how many generations can you stall for? Oh, many, and you will see. Yvette Deveau says, feeling betrayed by both the conservative leaders I voted for.
Yeah, and that I am as well. I really believed in Poilievre at one point. I spoke highly of him on this show many a time, and now he's campaigning against the people that are trying to bring the change that he couldn't bring. And Danielle Smith claims to want a lot of the first principles Alberta independence wants, but she wants to pull the rug out from under us and not allow us to have real democracy. She wants us to have the illusion of democracy with a question for another question at some future date.
BMZ Television says Ottawa takes 15 per barrel of oil and Alberta earns 12 per barrel of oil, and that should be all you need to know. Sean says, I don't think they will federalize natural resources. I think Carney has and will continue to sell Alberta's resources to China while using the money to pay off First Nations to act as their usurper.
No, I truly believe he's federalizing them, and he's building too many mechanisms to ignore at this point, and he's getting too much cooperation from political leaders in certain provinces. A lot of that oil will wind up going to China, so it will be collaborative, but the money coming back will go into the federal coffers, I believe.
BMC Television, thank you so much, says you guys are nailing it. Ghost of a Chance says, I've watched the country fail miserably for 2 generations. Is 4 generations enough? I think it's on a path of if something really major doesn't happen, it'll just continue to barrel down the path. He's
on the path of communism and complete destruction. Complete destruction is going to be a communist government. He's moving in that direction with federalization of natural resources and a lot of other things. Censorship. He's literally setting up the Chinese system in front of your eyes. The new private property rights. If you don't know how private property rights work on First Nations land, sometimes they build housing that they'll sell to people that aren't First Nations, and what you get is a 99-year lease. That's probably what they're going to try to implement in the entire province of British Columbia eventually, and that is the exact same system the Chinese Communist Party has in China. When you own a piece of property in China, it's on a 99-year lease, and then it reverts back to the CCP. So Carney is directly on path to adopt that system.
Literally adopting that system. Okay, let's go into Alberta's Canada before we run out of time, and then we'll continue with your comments.
Yeah.
I'm angry. I've had enough of this.
A little bit of a stall there with my little video, but speaking of the devil, Rise of Alberta says, quote, Mark Carney has now made it obvious Ottawa will use the Clarity Act as a gatekeeping tool against Alberta independence. Quebec responded to the Clarity Act with Bill 99, a law asserting Quebec's right to self-determination, defending the authority of its National Assembly, and recognizing that a referendum is decided by a majority of valid votes cast. Alberta needs its own Bill 99. And again, this is why the Quebec circumstance is a little bit different, and the circumstances are very different from Alberta currently.
And why can't we make these bills to protect us? Because we got Danielle Smith in there. We get somebody like a Keith Wilson in there, or somebody that we can trust. We can start putting bills forward so we don't get First Nations interference and federal interference into a question like independence. Maybe we have to build legislation so we can even have a vote, which sounds crazy. But this clip we played yesterday as well, but it's very telling because Mark Carney's literally telling you what he's going to do to the referendum question. He's going to use the Clarity Act to attack it. The question that she proposed, I don't think meets the Clarity Act. It's confusing, and he's probably going to attack it like he's already said here.
Separatists say they have more than 300,000 signatures to potentially trigger a referendum vote. What will you do to stop that referendum from winning?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is there's, again, keeping with the discussion today, there's the rule of law, there's the Clarity Act, which has been opined upon by the Supreme Court. Not at the same time when Madame Arbour was sitting on the Supreme Court, but has been the judgment passed there, and any referenda in any part of Canada need to be consistent with that. As you know as well, there's a judicial, you may know, there's a judicial challenge separately but relatedly by Indigenous nations in Alberta regarding the question. So those processes have to be followed through. But if you bring it into, so I'm observing that because of the solemnity of the moment that we're observing today and celebrating today, but if you bring it into my day-to-day responsibilities and those of the government, it's to continue to act as we have from the start, which is in the spirit of cooperative federalism, making the country work, making it work for Albertans, making it work for Indigenous peoples.
Cooperative federalism. Let's federalize all your natural resources and make sure everybody cooperates to stop a democratic vote from taking place.
And what's also funny and interesting is that Danny Girl's answer today, the many times she answered, she did it along very similar lines to what he just said there about the court challenges and the First Nations and the having to stall it and then not being able to just put it on there.
Well, and you have to realize if he's going to make the hard turn towards communism, he no longer needs the Conservative Party. What he needs to do is tap Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre on the shoulder, send them into Alberta to literally stump and campaign against their own first principles that Alberta independence is pitching. That will absolutely destroy the Conservative Party on a national scale. And the only thing that will be left is the Liberal Party. And I would hate to absolutely see that. But if Pierre Poilievre comes stumping in Alberta, he's going to have something else coming to him. And the same goes for Danielle Smith.
Let's look at the other side, though. Real talk, Ryan Jesperson, we continue to play him for some reason, says, quote, "You can't light a fire and claim that you're not responsible for the smoke." Legendary entrepreneur Arlene Dickinson says, "Premier Danielle Smith is fueling separatist sentiment in Alberta. Do you agree with her?" No, especially not after today's press conference. And again, I do think the other side is running out of proper ways to counteract this because now they really can't say that Danielle Smith is with the separatists because the separatists are now almost completely against her, or independence people. We're all seeing what she's doing and the stalling that she's doing. So they have to come up with better talking points.
This is fantastic. Again, they need Danielle Smith more than anybody. As much as, well, we don't like her in independence right now, she is the best articulated person for the Federalists. She knows the points inside out and out, especially when it comes to Alberta. I'm sure she's going to be the one training Pierre Poilievre up on the talking points as well. So if they want to attack her, let them attack her.
I don't think this is really about separatism. Most Albertans don't want to leave Canada. This is about a premier who has used the threat of separatism as leverage. She does it to extract concessions from Ottawa, to fire up her base, and to win elections. The problem is, though, that you can't light a fire and then claim you're not responsible for the smoke. And that's what she's been doing. She's been allowing this to happen, and she has, in fact, made it easier for it to happen, and then, pretends that, it had nothing to do with her. I certainly am just one voice amongst many who are concerned about what's happening in Alberta and wanting to make sure that there is a balanced view about what's going on, and also more factual view of what's going on. I want to be balanced. I'm not trying to make things worse when I post. I'm really just trying to state my opinion with clarity and without trying to be personal. Sometimes, of course, I feel that we're all human. We all say things in anger or being upset, but I really appreciate Canadians reaching out to me and saying that they are grateful that I do raise my voice and use my platform. I think that's the only thing TV or being on TV or,
And these are these TDS, Liberals, NDP, and they're not going to want to accept the help from Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith. And although I'm going to go directly after those two once they start campaigning within Alberta, I'm just shocked that they can't put their differences aside and realize that those two are going to have a better pitch inside of Alberta than any other politician has a chance to do. But the fact, again, is they're politicians. And this is a grassroots movement of citizens. It really looks like the elites are trying to tell the citizens, no, you can't have democracy. No, you have to fall in line.
You go through us.
Yeah, you go through us.
And then you had from Rebel News yesterday's statement from Danielle Smith. Did you want me to bring it up or no?
No, that's good. We can go into any comments now.
Okay. Oh, now you like the comments.
Well, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah, because there's a fringe, then there's the Mitch meeting for the canvassers, and etc. So more important things to do. Pete says, just watch the entire oil business leaders agree behind back doors not to partake in Carney's MOU pipeline. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They've already kind of said that they don't want, especially from the US, business leaders don't want to do business with Canada because of all the impositions that they're already put in.
Well, what did I say that was about, Pete? And I've been saying it for almost a month now. I said nobody's going to touch it. And it's because Carney's going to be the one that touches it. This is the federalization of it. He puts so much regulations on it that private industry won't touch it. And then he'll be the one that swoops in and federalizes natural resources. And once he sets the precedent once, he's just going to continue the precedents all the way across Canada.
Sean says, also that First Nation statement was an admission. They have no treaty or agreement with Alberta. Then how did you have the standing to sue and set aside the binding referendum? You can't have both.
Yeah.
And again, Sean is coming from a U.S. perspective as well. So
First Nations can have whatever they want in Canada. It's just absolutely ridiculous. That's why I don't live in the country anymore.
Pete says the carbon tax increases will hit Saskatchewan super hard and they know it. Maybe that could be a motivating factor, hopefully. Pete
well,
says,
not when you have somebody like Scott Moe just getting buddy-buddy with Mark Carney at every chance he gets.
Mm-hmm.
And then he claims to be protecting people's firearms rights when all he's saying is you have to put your firearm on a list so we can protect it. And when the federal government's ready to pay you fair market value, you have to sell it at that point. That's not protecting people's firearms.
Todd says, stupid in Canada. You got that right, guy. Austin says, a Liberal majority is being taken from Carney with another Liberal resignation for now. Unless more floor crossings happen, could be an election sooner than later if that doesn't hold.
Well, if you see what else happened, there's conservative MPs stepping down as well. So I think Mark Carney has had so many floor crossers. He doesn't actually want to have another floor crosser unless he absolutely has to. So he's probably making backroom deals for certain conservative MPs to step down. It's not getting a lot of coverage like a lot of the drama going around Mark Carney. I think he's got a pretty safe majority government for the next 3 years.
MOC9M says Preston Manning and Stockwell Day were the previous Judas goats that led Albertans back into the federal paddock and put a lid on independence. Danielle Smith can be added to that list now.
Yeah.
And Todd says, why I run a Saskatoon flag everywhere I go. Yes, and he does because he's sent us pictures to prove it. Pete says, both my parents' home province, luckily they had sense to make me in Alberta. Austin, we might have to do that. Austin Buzzwood says, LOL, I don't really want another politician in Alberta. Someone like Keith would be great because he isn't a politician and he doesn't even want to be. And that's what we continue to say. And we've said initially from the beginning that the fact that he really doesn't want to be the leader or he really doesn't want to be a politician is what makes him a great leader.
Another great thing
that he's not there for power.
Another great thing that would make him great as leader of the UCP or leader of the independence movement is he no longer wants to be in Canada if Alberta independence isn't a thing. He realized Canada is a failed nation, just like I realized that too. If we can't have Alberta independence, it's not worth sticking around anymore. So he will fight tooth and nail to make sure that becomes a reality.
And this one's also interesting and very right. Troglodyte says, the other parties and the mainstream media hate Max. That's a good sign. He pushed the Overton window and took flack for it.
I absolutely
agree. And continues
agree.
to try to push the Overton window.
I like Max. I like Dallas Brody. Hopefully Keith Wilson steps up because Keith Wilson would be the best. Yes. And I will lend my support behind the leader of the PQ because it could be a major weapon to kind of help Alberta independence.
Sean says, that's cool. You fly the Saskatchewan flag. I fly the Oregon flag at my house. It has a big beaver on it. That's a joke. Goes to a chance that Super Dave Osborne would be great sitting in Parliament. Daryl Robinson says, UCP member virtual meeting Saturday morning. If you can, please attend. I will be calling for Mr. Keith Wilson to run for party leader.
Absolutely.
And thank you for doing that. Todd says, always fly your great neighbors' flags.
Danielle Smith will lose her shit if Keith Wilson steps up to the plate. She knows the power of Keith Wilson, not just amongst the independence movement. We're completely united behind him, but he has a ton of sway amongst Federalists that are against independence as well because of the way he conducts himself. And he has built those relationships over generations.
Todd says, always fly your great neighbors' flags. I guess we should fly the U.S. one down here. Pete says, there is no yes or no answer to the question they put out yesterday if you read it. Exactly. It's, do you want this or do you want that? It's an and or question. No, it's an or question, not an and.
Why do you think it was phrased like that? We just showed the clip of Mark Carney. He said he's going to go after the Clarity Act. He's going to utilize the Clarity Act. He's already said that. And so she made it a question that was not clear. What do you think is going to happen next? We've seen both clips.
Todd says, I run the BC flag as well, especially for the farms in Tumblr when it was going down.
Mm-hmm.
Roland Halleck says, Danny has a majority now. Put it in now. Yeah, doesn't care. Todd says, this white hair is an idiot. Carney. Roland Halleck says, the country does not work, period. Class action lawsuit to stop the commies. Ghost of a Chance says, we Sprite, Carney, doesn't seem to realize he has maneuvered himself into total power. I think he realizes pretty well what he has done.
Yeah, he's got it for 3 years. And the way he's going to bring in censorship laws, fund the mainstream media, whoever gets a crack at him, I don't think is going to take him out at that point. He's going to completely destroy the country and turn it communism.
Todd says, Guy called it. And I guess you continue to call it. Sean says, I thought Canada was a confederal government, not a federal government. Sorry, I may sound like stupidity, but given what I have seen, you don't have dual sovereignty, which is a problem for independence.
No, we don't have any kind of sovereignty. We don't have any kind of freedom or independence. And democracy is starting to die in darkness in the depths of Alberta right now, and we need to fight to keep it alive.
Yes. Austin Westwood says, yes, true. There were a lot of UCP members and voters that stood behind her still because we thought she was assisting the independence movement. I definitely think that support will be gone now.
Well, and remember,
I don't know if it was calculated. Maybe it was even calculated by her that way. I don't know.
Remember, like, we already own 60% of the caucus. It's going to be easy to get that membership up to about 70. Then we have the October 19th referendum. And once Alberta actually starts enacting change and she does nothing on it, we're going to own 90% of that caucus. It will be ours. And then we put Keith Wilson or whoever we want in there.
David Bird asks, will Danielle be flipping pancakes at the Calgary Stampede? She'll get a bunch of batter on her. I mean, she'll try, I guess, because again, she said she's going to be campaigning for Alberta to stay within Canada. And I'm guessing with Poilievre right by her side. So.
Her and Poilievre are swearing allegiance to the globalists that are owning Canada right now. That's how I see it.
Pete says, so who's allowing it to happen in Quebec? What BS? It's the people, dummy. Well, in Quebec, again, they were, I guess, in a way smart enough to put in that Bill 99. And as Nico Lagan was telling us during the interview, the mechanism in Quebec is very different. It's just basically about getting the PQ in and then starting to declare independence.
Yeah, we need the PQ in because they can speak up against a lot of this and they don't want precedents set in Western Canada that could affect them even if they do have that Bill 99. That's number one. Number two is Quebec's independence movement isn't as popular as Alberta's is right now. I don't think it has a real chance of seceding. I'll support it in every way I can, but getting the PQ in there is not about getting Quebec independence as much as it is getting somebody to speak up against the federal government that actually has political power that can stop a lot of this overreach with these precedents.
Ghost of a Chan says the Wee Sprite will be flipping Smith-shaped pancakes at the Stampede. Carney. Sean says, common law is common law. Basics are the same in all common law countries for the past 1,000 years. At least it should be.
You know what?
What?
Maybe they'll all come out together, the three big Albertans.
Oh, yeah.
Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, and Mark Carney. And they'll stump together.
They'll make pancakes together. Yes. Feed more BS to the people. Literally, feed more bullshit to the people. Ghost of a Chan says, I think she needs to reread Values. Sheesh. I'm sure she's read it a bunch of times, though, by Carney.
Yeah.
Amo69M says, was sitting at the red light in my milled out beater while a band member in their new Jaguar X-Type rolled up next to me. How's that drinking water problem going? Todd says, I might make my way to Dublin, Ireland. I mean, I guess there you can also continue to fight for independence on that side too.
Ireland's even more screwed up than Canada. I follow their politics very, very closely, and the globalists use it as their training ground to see what will work, what won't work, and how far they can actually push things.
And hold on, because now, well, no, I guess. Albertans, I guess Sean means, are you serious? Sure seems like it. By allowing this court ruling to stand, you are making a legal precedent for the future. It's a big problem being accepted. Exactly. And that's, I think, if you listen very carefully to what Danielle Smith was saying earlier today, it seems like that's what she's expecting it for what she's expecting to happen, because she said, given the precedents from the courts, and then we have to wait for the appeal, and then we don't know if I put in a binding question that might also get turned down by the courts. So it really did seem like she was almost counting on the courts to say no to her, and like she was like that's what's going to stop her from putting that question in, the real question in. Pete says, thanks for your hard work and mountains of info, everybody. Yes, and thank you to everybody also for commenting and letting us know what you think, but also giving us information almost live or if not live as well. Sean says, Albertans, well, they will vote Liberal, which I assume is irrational. Maybe, I don't know. Pete says, every freaking episode I learned, that's a good channel. Thank you. and hopefully, and again, we're still learning too on some of these things.
Tomorrow we got one episode at 5 p.m. because it's going to be Saturday. We'll kind of recap what went throughout the week and what's going to happen at the meeting tonight at 7 p.m. and what kind of questions were answered, what's the game plan going forward. And then next week we'll get back to positivity and really game planning the best way to win that October 19th referendum. The last couple, well, I guess one day kind of sent us for a bit of a loop.
Yes. And again, tomorrow, Freedom Calendar's interview will come out. So Max's interview will come out. And then Jason Levine and Paula's interview will come out Sunday.
Okay.
Just giving people a heads up because I always forget to tell you. Yvette DeVille says, all right, people, time for all to send Keith an exemplary letter to convince him to run to save this republic he has fought so hard for. Independence, please don't let it be in vain. Let's go.
Well, and his wife's a huge supporter of independence. She's the one that made him lighten up his workload so he could step up on the independence front. So thank you to not only Keith, but his wife as well.
Sean says, see, Albertans, good to talk to you. Thank you for being here, Sean. Roland Halleck says, Quebec never signed the Constitution, so why are they able to vote in government, period? Because they stomp their feet hard enough.
I guess there's 3 levels of government, the Canadian government, the Quebec government, and the First Nations.
Yeah, those will go at the top. Mike Freedom Honey says, smash that like button. Thank you so much. And yes, it really does help out when you smash that like button. We always try to get to 100 likes per stream. Sean says, Alberta isn't going to have a non-binding vote. You heard it here first. Court will block it. Pete says, gotta pack my bike for a week on the road tomorrow. Be safe, please, and good luck over there. Roland Halleck says, your question does not meet the Clarity Act, so it will get shut down anyway on purpose. Seems like it that way. Ghost of a Chance says, if Quebec did not sign the 1982 Constitution, why do they have specific and a large representation on the Supreme Court of Canada? Good question.
Yeah.
Austin Westwood says, let's start a petition to get Keith as a leader. Austin Westwood says, or flood his mailbox with email.
Well, and the Fringe was asking him last night, and he seemed pretty receptive to the idea overall. So, and we're definitely looking for somebody for the UCP leadership right now.
And are we going to go to our UMBLE or no?
No, that's going to be it for tonight.
Let me finish all the questions over here too.
Okay.
Portofino says, Nenshit is a WEF Muppet. Yes. Todd asks, is this a new show when they come on the YouTube or stay right here? Usually when we go over to our UMBLE, we do certain stories that we can't touch on YouTube because YouTube likes censorship. But today we're just going to let everybody go over to the Mitch meeting and then to go watch the Fringe. Hold on. Portofino says, I'll never vote for Max. He's just another Quebec politician. Change the leader, then maybe I'll consider it.
Yeah, and it's fine if people don't like him. I like him. I like the fact that the platform hasn't changed, not a notch since they put it into effect. True. And I appreciate that.
Portofino says, my prediction, Danielle won't last the year. Let's see if she lasts the months. KP4U says, we are being scammed. We need to actually do something. Time is of the essence. They are making a run for it, taking land resources before the people wake up.
And that's what we're trying to do. That's why I'm broadcasting twice a day. That's what I've talked about, the federalization and the taking of land. Not just taking of land. They're federalizing natural resources right before your eyes. They're turning Canada communist. And it's very easy to see, especially once you leave the country. I can't believe more people aren't standing standing up and pulling their hair out at this point. I mean, Albertans are, but the rest of Canada isn't.
Independent Alberta, thank you so much for gifting 5 subscriptions on RUMBLE
Thank you.
to the channel and says howdy. Todd was gifted a membership and Portofino was gifted a membership. Thank you so much. And KP4U says Danielle uses everything as an excuse / scapegoat. We should have Salem Witch Trials Berta edition. Hold on. Sean says, I'm just keeping it 100. Thank you. Austin says, yes, last night's his comments about leadership were a new tune for sure. And yeah. Sounds promising. Exactly.
And
Don
we need
says,
that.
agreed.
We need that right now, especially if it's going to be an extended timeline.
And Sean coming in here with a prediction. Sean coming in here with a prediction saying Alberta will be independent, but not the way you think. That's a good one to leave.
As long as we get independence, I guess.
But good luck over on the Zoom call with Mitch. Good luck going over to the Fringe. Please hit the like button before you go over there. Again, we're not going over to RUMBLE tonight. And don't forget to subscribe before you go. Tomorrow we have a show at 5 p.m. And we do have Max's or Freedom Calendar's interview coming out tomorrow as well.
Yeah, we're getting really close to 3,000 subscribers. So that's going to be a big goal once we do hit that.
Thank you so much for joining us twice today. Lots of things to think about. We'll see you tomorrow.
Adios.